Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to your post-match Raw on AI Pro, podcasting to you from my field here in beautiful rural Ireland. I'm Trev Downey, and joining me to give their immediate reactions to Tottenham Hotspur 1, Liverpool 2 in the Premier League from the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium are Dave, Hendrick and Hari Sethi. I have a feeling, Dave, that we may be in sort of opposite sides of the fence here than we usually are. I'm entirely disgruntled after that, although of course very grateful for any win away in a season where I don't believe we've managed it so far.
No, we're on the same side of the fence for certain. Firstly, let me thank you for taking time out of your schedule as a pro gamer to join us here on post-match Raw. And that was a twist I don't think anyone saw. But, no, look, I'm like you. I'm frazzled after watching that, especially that second half. Jesus wept. But a win is a win. We hadn't won away from home in the league all season. Our only two away wins were at Ibrox and in Amsterdam. Our away form and our away performances have been an abomination. And it's just nice to get 3 points against a top four rival. And they are one of the teams that are going to be in that mix for top four. They're a good team with good players. We were a little bit fortunate today that they had Son out, Romero out, and Kulusevski coming back from injury. But at the same time, we had players out as well, so it's not like it was our best 11. But yeah, very much a game of two halves, I think, from Liverpool today and from Spurs. And Klopp, I think, Trev, with a personal attack on all the fans, trying to give them all some sort of coronary event with the substitutions that he made, progressively making the team worse along the way.
Yeah, I do look forward to talking about that particular aspect because it's just not going away as a feature. And Harry, to bring you in early as well. I mean, it seems churlish to be overly critical, especially in the opening stages of a show where we've just won a big away game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, as they insist on calling it these days. And I do fully put my hands up and acknowledge that might be a little bit churlish on my behalf, but at the same time, it's hard not to. When you've spent 45 minutes wincing, it's hard to understand what's happening. And I wonder if you follow the what I've always thought overly simplistic narrative of, the lads are spent, because that's the only thing that could really explain the falling off in terms of our possession play in that second half and the inviting on of the narrative with a TM and a circle afterwards of second half Spurs. It's hard to, it's in terms of game management, it seems like deliberately almost trying to take out the old shotgun and shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah, I was quite, I mean, it is a weird thing. I mean, first and foremost, obviously, I'd be happy to dog out those 3 points like that for the remainder. I mean, I wouldn't be happy, but I'd take it for the remainder of the season if we managed to actually sort of get them done. Such has been sort of the situation that we've been in this season. But game management wise, I thought it was quite poor for large stretches of that game. We actually sort of ended up just relying upon the strength of a couple of our defenders, a little bit of luck at moments as well. And I think that if Spurs were at full strength in terms of their attacking options, and I know we were under strength as well, but if they were at full strength with their attacking options, you imagine they could have made us sort of pay for that. But again, I thought that throughout the first sort of 20 minutes of that second half, once we'd weathered their storm or sort of their early pressure, the knockout blow, you could see it was sort of in reach. And there was one attack in particular. I think it was maybe they thought Nunez was offside or whatever, but it just sort of it built up really nicely, and then we got right to the edge of their box, and a number of players there were options available, and then we just sort of slowed it down again. And it was a weird thing to watch. And I know I've heard you and Dave talk about the merits of just how much can you actually put into this whole they're spent narrative. I'm not sure where I end up sort of on that at the moment, but I think it's undeniable that the figures are falling off a cliff when it comes to like what is it, sprints, like high speed sprints, running, general pressing. I know it's down across the league anyway. And I did find it really concerning just how empty the tanks looked in that second half. Once we'd got past the first maybe 15, 20 minutes, the tanks really did look empty, with the exception of a few players who maybe haven't featured actually that much for us this season, or are just supremely fit, sort of best players in the team, for example. So I really don't know. I mean, I find it really, really hard to point it to a lack of effort. I find that difficult to believe, even though I think there's some players managing themselves here ahead of the World Cup, and we've seen numerous players go down with injuries and rule themselves out of the tournament over the past few weeks. So I can understand why that's a difficult thing to manage, really, as a professional. But yeah, no, in that second half, and it's not the first time, is it, Trev? It's worrying just how empty at times the tank looks, and we try and manage the game, but yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if these guys have seen each other this season. We can't really do that.
Yeah, it's funny, and feel free to both come in on this. But I mean, just to talk about it, because we brought the subject up, and I'm sure it'll come around again, but it may not. And I want to finish it out. The manifestation of that empty tank is not just in legginess as such, but in almost inconceivably bad decision making again and again and again. Fellas seemingly unable to put a ball, put their foot through a ball and lamp it to the far end of the field or up into the proverbial rosette or whatever it happens to be. Guys trying to do little tippy tappy bits when it's absolutely not appropriate. I love how we have the courage to play our way out of comparatively dangerous situations, but you don't do it when you're on the receiving end of 3-4 minutes of concerted pressure. Do you know what I mean, Harry? And that's what's bugging me. And that's what when I use words like game management, I'm thinking of guys who are super footballers, who should know better. I mean, let's just get it out of the way early on. Bobby Firmino today is full on Robert. That was full on Robert Firmino. I don't know what that was, but it's possibly his worst outing for us. I thought he was horrendous, and we were very lucky we didn't concede as a result of 2 or 3 losses that he had, which were totally unnecessary. But when you see the likes of Fab and Ibu and Virgil and all these other great lads, Thiago, just tipping at it around the edge of our box or in our box, it's like, no, lads,
There was even that moment, wasn't there, where Ali just decided to wait, just keep waiting until
exactly
Kane played it. And there was the irony of, I think, that he was trying to tell the team to calm down. It's a weird thing. It's like, it's definitely like in moments where you sort of want them to be, maybe a bit more energetic or a bit more intense, they're not. And then in other moments where you want them to be calm, they're not, and then they're calm in the moments where you want them to be intense. It's all out of whack in terms of their equilibrium. It seems to be. I mean, the likes of Thiago, I think we're sort of used to him like doing stuff on occasion, like trying to bring the ball down for an immaculate touch whilst he's in his own penalty area, surrounded by five Tottenham players. I'd rather he didn't do that. But yeah, no, it's a strange thing to watch on a regular basis, especially when I think Dave mentioned it, that you're bringing these subs on, and I think we've spoken in the past about at times these changes to bring on an extra defender in the last 10 minutes only ever invites pressure on us. I've never liked those changes whenever they've been made. Theoretically, okay, it makes sense on a tactics board, but when your midfield is practically doing nothing and you're just...
But we're not a team that plays the back three.
No.
And if we were a team that the odd time played a back three from the beginning of a game, you'd be fine with them going to a back three in game. But if he wanted to bring Gomez on, the change to make would have been to shift Trent to the right side of midfield. And rather than going 5-4-1, go 4-5-1.
He seems really resistant to doing Trent in midfield at all, doesn't he? Which is a really weird situation.
Like, it's getting to the point where that is one of the worst defensive displays I've ever seen in the first half. He was absolutely shocking.
Yeah, he got roasted. He got
roasted, and he got rattled, and then he was all at sea, and he's dragging out of fellas, and he's shoving people over, and he's not focused. Like, the one with Sessegnon that he ends up shoving him to the ground was because he got rattled by Perisic closing him. And like all he had to do was stay on his feet and put the ball into the stands.
Yeah.
It's the most simple thing. You've got 2 yards on him, put the ball into the stands and forget about it.
But look at the far side of the pitch. Look at the concession of their goal. I'm watching it here in a loop just to torment myself. And they just stroll down our left-hand side like it's non-existent. There are lads jogging. And there's little balls being played around. And even, to be honest, the finish from Kane is outrageous. He has no right to be finishing from there past Ibu's outstretched leg, past Ali at that angle. But the ball into him is too easy. The ball into Kulusevski's too easy. The first ball before that's too easy. There are literally lads strolling. And I'm like, Jesus, please, can we just get one player who will, like, and part of me was hoping Darwin Núñez would do that, who will just go over and kick a lad right up into the air and go, fuck you, no further. But we don't seem to have
I was watching that game today, Trev, thinking that if you put Yves Bissouma into our midfield, we look a team transformed. That energy, that aggression, that willingness to close space, all the things Gini Wijnaldum used to do for us.
Exactly.
Closing off passing lanes. The one criticism I have of Ibu, who for me I thought was the best player we had today. I know Mo got his goals. I know Darwin was good and a few others were very good. But I thought Ibu was absolutely magnificent. The one little bit of criticism I have is that I thought he could have done a bit more on Kane for that goal. But then I wonder if he's thinking, if I commit to like throwing myself at a block, does he cut back onto his left foot and have an easier chance? So it's hard to criticize him too much. He was absolutely astonishing today. And the best tweet I saw during the first half was Liverpool's 2 centre-backs are clearly playing with the World Cup in mind. Konate trying to get into the French squad and Van Dijk trying to make sure he's fit. Because Virgil is managing himself through games and he's far too lax, far too casual. I thought he upped his game a bit in the second half. But in the first half, the only threats they had were those long diagonals to Sessegnon, who had acres of space because Trent wasn't getting wide and Harvey wasn't covering back, and Virgil being too lax and too easy about things. Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own Two-Footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m, Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin De Vries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, it's such. You bring up Harvey there, and again, I'll get back to formula in a second in case you're wondering what's happening, listeners. I haven't derailed the show completely, but even just the mention of Harvey there in terms of the whole shape of this team, I thought that kid did fantastically well in terms of getting involved in the play in a productive way. But you've pointed out regularly, Dave, on this show, it's not his game. He's not designed to get back and do that covering work, and you can't teach a fella to do that in games in the middle of an important season when you don't have any training sessions worth a damn in between games either. So it's not going to happen, and it's a thing that we needed to look out for.
It's a shame there's not like a pre-season, like a training camp or something where you could work on these things with players. If we could bring something like that in,
yeah. Well, it's also a shame that we don't have a really good, technically gifted guy who could play on the right hand side with a defensive type behind him. Oh wait, we do. It's strange. It's strange all around, up and down. Dave, let's have a look at the Liverpool lineup. You know, we've touched on a few of those players. Probably not too much that you would have expected different there in terms of who might have been chosen. I think, personally, I didn't know fully what the situation with Henderson was going into this game in terms of his fitness, but I'd have suspected he might have started alongside Thiago and Fab. He went with Elliott instead. I don't think there's too many other surprises there, given what's on the bench. We only really had 3 attackers worth a damn that we could mention. Carvalho, like we say, still an amoeba in terms of the first team. So for me, that was probably not surprising and probably the best option he could have gone with. Feel free to critique that, and you too, Harry, later if you wish. But let's just start by having a look at the opposition. And Antonio Conte set them up in a way that I don't think was too surprising. Most people will have expected this lineup or something very similar to it as well. They went with Lloris. They had Dyer and Langley and Davies, Emerson one side and Szczesny on the other. Bentancur, Basuma and Højbjerg is a very serviceable unit indeed. Perisic and Kane up top. And the thing about Perisic is he's just a quality player. And for all the Sky pundits I was watching on Sky were critiquing how he couldn't see the game in front of him like he likes to, I thought he was ridiculously involved. And as the game went on, ridiculously involved. A good footballer is a good footballer. Yeah. And that's a very solid team, Dave. I mean, you can see what they're trying to do. You can see what the game plan is there. We've acknowledged that they are short some really, really good footballers who make a difference to them. And being able to play Perisic in a different position with Son up top alongside Kane would obviously be an advantage. But we're missing game changers too, a lot of them. So
of course.
I think on balance, they probably had something a little bit closer to their chosen 11. What do you make of the way they're evolving? I mean, that's a couple of real disappointing Premier League results sort of in a short-ish period for them against opposition. When you think about where they could be, let's leave us out of it. They probably would think, they're getting us at a good time, and they've dropped at least 6 points they should have had in the bag. What do you make of them and the way they're evolving under this manager?
They've had a very strange season. I've watched most of their games, and the thing that strikes me is that they're allowing teams to have far more of the ball than they really should. You look at the start of the season that they went one behind at Southampton and came back and battered them. Then they got completely outplayed by Chelsea, but managed to get a point. Got outplayed at home by Wolves, but managed to win the game. They went and beat Forest. They got outplayed by West Ham, but managed to get a point. Then they beat Fulham. They hammered Leicester. And then they played Arsenal. And in the Arsenal game, I was really disappointed by them. There was no real fight in that team. They looked leggy. It was coming off the back of games being postponed because of the Queen's passing and whatever else. And they'd played one game in like a month in the Premier League. They'd played Leicester. And that was kind of it between the start of September and the start of October. So Arsenal beat them. They go to Brighton, get a great result. They beat Everton. Then they play United, and they just don't turn up at all. Then they play Newcastle. And in truth, they should have beaten Newcastle. They had the better chances. They had more of the ball. They had dominance in the game, but they just couldn't translate that into goals. They beat Bournemouth last week coming from behind, like in a game where they didn't play particularly well, bar about 20 minutes. So you're looking at them, you're thinking there's a lot of talent there, but they just don't seem to be able to fully find the right balance. And today you're looking at, Emerson Royale is serviceable but limited. Sessegnon's a player I do like. I think of the three who've come out of the Fulham Academy in recent years, and we have the other two, I think he's the most talented of them. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be a fan of Eric Dyer, and I think we saw why in the first half. But then in the second half, we gave him this license to just stroll in and play as like a right-sided midfielder and dictate parts of the game from there. Langley has flaws, Davies has flaws. That's not a perfect defence, but when Romero's fit, he fixes a lot of that. That's one area they'll have to upgrade. I think they've got to upgrade the keeper as well. I think Lloris has seen his day. The midfield is a Liverpool circa 2017 to 20. Functional, hard grafting players. There's probably a higher technical level in Bentancur than in Henderson, but as they go, they're similar enough players. Basuma is a bit more dynamic than Fab, but as a sitting midfielder, they do quite similar things. And then Højbjerg is a very intelligent player who links the game really well, the same way Ginny did. So that midfield you can see making sense. The problem is you're not getting enough down the right from Emerson to make up for the fact that you don't get much from your midfield in terms of creativity. Kane, we know, is the guy's probably the best striker in the world after Benzema, if not better. And Perisic is he's just really good. He's just really, really good. And he'll be 34 in February, but he's one of those players that can just do a really good job. You can play him anywhere. Right back, left back, central midfield, wing, up front. And he's just really intelligent, really clever, technically very strong. He's grown a lot in terms of his maturity in the last 6-7 years. He was a very immature player when he was young, and one of the reasons he didn't work out when he was at Dortmund under Klopp is Klopp just couldn't get on board with the immature side of his game. But it's a talented team, and you bring Kane in, or you bring Son back in, you bring Kulusevski in, which is the one thing they really lack because they don't have it in midfield. They need someone that can link midfield to attack, and Kulusevski does that brilliantly with his ball carrying, and he's a decent passer of the ball. I think when they get everybody back, I think they're going to be fine. I think they'll be good and in the mix for top four. I think they'll get top four. But I also think they need to give that manager money to spend because for me, he's right among the very elite. And he's just kind of working with one hand behind his back because they haven't backed him to the full extent yet. They haven't let him have enough control over who they're bringing in. Like, it's quite clear he didn't fancy Jed Spence. Basuma has been in and out of the teams. He'd wondered, does he really fancy Basuma? So they've got work to do, but there's a good team there. As far as we go, I think he had to play Harvey over Henderson because of what he wanted to do, which was to play the diamond when we had the ball and a flat four in midfield when we didn't. And if you notice, Bobby, when they had the ball, Bobby was playing next to Mo and Darwin was left wing. But when we had the ball, when they had the ball, Darwin was left wing, Bobby was next to Mo. But when we got the ball, Bobby was dropping deeper and Darwin was getting a bit more central. And Harvey gives you the flexibility to play the diamond to the four, more so than Henderson, who just can't play right wing anymore because the guy can't run anymore. And we saw it when he came on. I mean, it's one of the worst sub appearances you'll ever see in your life. But it was his best available 11. Obviously, we know that Diaz comes back and improves it. Jota would be an enormous upgrade on what we had on the bench if Naby Keita hadn't been born with muscles that explode at the slightest bit of pressure. He would be in the team, I guess. But I think it's the best 11 he had, and I think it made the most sense given what the tactical plan was, the flat four off the ball, the diamond on the ball, and Núñez playing that kind of transition role, left wing, centre forward.
Harry, we saw Big Tone Conte acting the Conte on the sideline there at one point. He's obviously a tremendously emotional man, and he's obviously, as Dave says, in that very top bracket of world coaches. People will obviously have different opinions. You see the occasional controversialist coming out saying maybe he's not, but and actually genuinely saying that maybe he's not in terms of ability. I can come out and start throwing insults around at Diego Simeone, but I have to say he's very, very good. I'm not an idiot. I just don't like him. I want to fight him. But Antonio Conte, I just have to say that lad's just you know, you don't really get to be too critical. He has a track record. So do you like Dave see that there's definitely a plan afoot that might need this season before they're definitely in the guaranteed Champions League places that you would imagine Conte must get, given what he's probably being paid?
Yeah, I think they're not as far along as I would have expected them to be at this stage, to be honest. I think there's you look at the defense really, and I think that's one of the big things for me, that just the individual quality of the defenders he's got at his disposal, probably with the exception of Romero, they're just not good enough really to play in the way in which he would like to do, and sort of to really achieve sort of the top level. I think that on occasion they can be a bit overly reliant on the guys that we know, obviously, in terms of sort of Simon Kane, but Kuvaslevski is I can never say his name right. Kuvaslevski has come in and been really, really impactful for them. Looks to be I had no idea he was as young as he was actually until about sort of a few months ago, when I realised just how much of a great deal they've got on their hands there. Bentancur's a great player, Basuma's a great player, but some of these new signings, it's taken time for them to be integrated. There's been a couple of key injuries, like we've spoken about already. I think there's still some players to move on there. I think Lloris will probably move on as well if Conte had his way and had the investment there as well. So there's sort of a weird side. They're watching this season, and I think their position in the table flatters them a little bit in terms of they have dogged a lot of games out. I mean, it's more than we've done, obviously, but in terms of yes, Conte has a style. Yes, you sort of know what you're getting a little bit, even if he's got all the parts that he needs. But this has been even more sort of, I feel like, patchwork than I would have expected at this stage, him being in the job as long as he has been at this stage. But no, I think that they're a formidable. They will be right up there in the mix, I imagine, by the end of the season. I think he's an excellent coach as well. I think there's probably a few missing pieces that he's looking for. But when I spoke to Seb for the rival recon pod ahead of the game, yeah, he was fairly nonplussed about it. Sort of thought maybe that the position in the table flattered them a little bit. That right hand side is he stressed the fullbacks really in terms of sort of they've never really replaced Danny Rose or Kyle Walker in terms of the significance those two had for them and the outlets those two were, regardless of what you think about them as individual players, they've never really replaced those two with sort of high quality players that fit the roles that they would like to see from them. Emerson Royale, for example, hard worker, but I think you can see that the quality on the ball that they would like him to have, he just doesn't have. So yeah, I think he's a good manager, and I think that they'll be right up there again. It might not be the most thrilling watch in the world. I'm a little bit suspicious of him in European competitions. But aside from that, yeah, I fully expect them to be up there and challenging for a top four spot.
Well, now, the story of the match was very much that we dominated the first half and were dominated in the second. And I think that will be pretty much proven by the chat that we're about to have about that first half, where I believe there might have been two Spurs efforts, perhaps maybe three moments where they were vaguely dangerous. But apart from that, it was all us. And we started really well, Harry. 2 minutes in, Darwin hits a fairly fierce half volley. And by the way, I'm always going to insist on calling these half volley. I heard Gary Neville saying he called it fully on the volley. No, the ball bounced and then he hit it. A half volley doesn't have to be one of those ones that you strike on the up tick of it. I always used to think that was the case, but it's. I'm being pedantic. It's a great hit, though, by the kid, I thought, after a fantastic ball forward by Robbo. Beautifully weighted pass that just bounced gorgeous in front of him, sat up really nice, and he hits it. It's tipped away by Lloris. And then Darwin's in again, 1v1 with Dyer from another Robbo ball a couple of minutes later. But he took a little bit too much out of it as he tried to go past him. And, of course, old Neville straight in talking about his sloppy touch. And to be fair to little Gaz Neville and Martin Tyler, they both got plenty of, I guess, opportunity to have their little sneery comments about Darwin, because he was a little bit loose with his touch and his control, and he did look a little bit awkward in those opening goings. But what they weren't seeing or acknowledging, either of them, was the fact that he was an incredible threat as well, and carried that sort of forward momentum for us in a way that, I found very exciting, I have to say. And, there was one, I think, in the second half where he kind of knocks it, perhaps not intentionally forward the way he would have intended to, but it ends up being a perfect touch, and he's driving in and he ends up getting a corner, I think, gets a shot away. And, Tyler's talking about his sloppy touch. Does it matter if you get in, if you do what you're supposed to do? There was an agenda there for sure. On 6 minutes, Harry, a glorious first time diagonal ball by Trent. And let's go and acknowledge that, because we're going to dig Trent out a lot for his defensive work today. But he was as good as he's been in terms of those forward passes. Some lovely balls, especially those diagonals. It's absolutely beautiful. First time hit. He just kind of hits through a ball that's moving into Darwin's path. Darwin cuts in and bends one narrowly wide of the keeper's left post. That's 3 times Darwin's involved in very attacking, threatening situations in those opening 6 minutes. Harvey Elliott equally very involved in the build-up play. He's really good at coming in from that wide position and getting involved centrally with little touches and balls around the corner. And he has the confidence to play that kind of game. And, while we're still stuck for personnel, he's not our worst option apart from that defensive situation. And we are, Harry, a goal ahead on 10 minutes. It's Mo Salah, an absolutely gorgeous move, which I actually think was begun with a great little short pass from Mo to Harvey Elliott. The move ends with a fantastic ball in from Andy Robertson to Darwin Núñez. Darwin takes a touch, perfect control, pings a really direct pass into Mo's feet, who's coming in from right to left. He takes the touch to control it and sweeps it home really quickly, really efficiently with his left foot. Sort of again away from him into the bottom of the right-hand post as he's looking. It's a fantastic goal in every single way that you want to measure a goal, Harry, and I don't want to say we're good value for it, but it's all the Reds up to that point. And it was lovely to see us impact and enforce ourselves in the game, because if second half Spurs is a thing, then shit first half Liverpool has been a thing as well. Conceding first Liverpool thing has been a thing as well. So at least we're trying to right some wrongs.
Oh yeah, scoring first. I was delighted. I mean, even at that stage, you still didn't know sort of how the game was going to unfold. But I think we're a damn better side when we do take the lead. I think it does give us. You imagine it gives the players confidence, and they've been really sort of struggling for that. It would appear over sort of the past few sort of games in the league. I think we've struggled to necessarily create like real great chances from open play and score open play goals as well over the past few games in the league as well. So I was happy about that, in that it was a really well constructed move. As you mentioned, lovely little flick pass from Mo to Elliott. They're involved together. Then Robbo again sort of coming in and delivering a high quality ball. Darwin, as you'd already mentioned, I mean, he'd been given a lot of stick by the commentary around sort of his sloppy touches and the fact that he was a bit raw. But I'm like you, I mean, obviously makes you feel alive, and that he's constantly an incredibly direct player. There was a bit of defending in the second half, actually. I mean, it was the end of the first half where he jumped over a player to head it out for a corner.
Oh, so much fun!
Thoroughly enjoy. I mean, yeah, if you're going to concede a corner, thoroughly enjoyable. So yeah, I thought he was. Yeah, the touch was good. Yeah, sets it perfectly for Mo to be able to sort of take that touch and finish it off quickly. Salah's obviously been in really good form of late as well. I think since he's been pushed in a little bit further from sort of being marooned out on the wing as much as he was at the start of the season. I think that's now he's sort of reading here that he's surpassed Fowler now as Liverpool's top scorer against Spurs in the league. So that's another record he can add to his ever increasing record book that he has. And yeah, I thought that there were a number of promising signs today of an understanding between Núñez and Salah in terms of sort of how they play, how they could dovetail more effectively. And yeah, I mean, that half volley you're mentioning from Núñez really early on, I loved that. I mean, some of the, like, I'm looking forward to the time where he managed to sort of rediscover his completely ruthless streak in front of goal. That I think will come with time and confidence. But some of the technique that he shows with his shooting is really impressive at times, and that was a really sort of well executed shot and sort of a immediate statement of intent from him as well. So I thought, whilst we could see there was an issue on that left hand side for Spurs, or maybe it was the right hand side, our left hand side, I thought it was good that we saw switches of play, we saw a desire to exploit that, because it's not always been the case.
100%. And Dave, to take you through the next chunk of the match, it's basically a couple of Spurs efforts, but mostly again us, and we'll go up as far as the second goal ourselves now. On 13 minutes, there is a decent cutback by Mo Salah to Bobby Firmino, but it's behind him in fairness. Then on 14, there is a kind of a Spurs effort, a Perisic header from a Kane cross. It comes off Ali's head, I think, and then the post. Play continues before Højbjerg then has an effort which is kind of half spilled by Ali, and Ibu clears. That's a very dangerous moment for sure. They were looking for a penalty on 90 minutes after Trent had lost the ball in his attempt to make up for, being a bit headless earlier on. He gives Sessegnon a wee shove. VAR have a look at it, and nothing's given. But I don't think in a different situation you could just go crying that much if it had been given. It was a silly thing to do, and clear contact, and intentional clear contact. 26 minutes, Sessegnon's raiding in past Trent. Ibu covered really well. We saw a fantastic win by Darwin on 27 minutes. He played in Mo Salah. Free was the result from that. Ibu versus Harry Kane on 29 minutes, up in their defensive third, was very good crack to watch. Ibu was just trailing Kane everywhere, right down into basically their left back position. And the two lads are going at each other. Thiago has a volley on 31 minutes. It was blocked after some half decent football by us. Another outrageous Trent diagonal on 32 minutes to Darwin. His touch was poor and the chance goes away. Then Trent pushes Sessegnon over in 33 minutes again, after he'd been utterly rattled by Perisic. You mentioned this one earlier on in a 1v1, leads to a free on their left-hand side. But he bounces back, does Trent, in the forward area of the pitch. Another great ball into Darwin Núñez. And again, Darwin's touch is sloppy. That's 34 minutes. We're doing okay. We're building up a bit of pressure in 35. And by 39 minutes, Dave, we have gone 2-0 up. And it's Mo again. And, this is every bit as enjoyable. It's an Ali pass forward, which is kind of to no one, if we're being perfectly honest. He doesn't pick out either of the targets that he had to aim at. But Dyer intervenes in a silly way, nodding the ball back towards his own goal. And Mo is fantastically opportunist. He gets in on it, and sort of the execution of this lofted finish over the advancing Lloris is just gorgeous. It takes way too long to go into the back of net, so you're left nervous for that millisecond. But when you can reflect on it, you can see how gorgeous it is. It's perfectly executed, and it's our man being an opportunistic poacher, which I will take all day of the week. If there's anything you want to go back on in that opening, in that chunk of that first half, feel free to do it. Talk to us a little bit about the goal, and just to round it out, there's not a whole lot else that happens in the remaining moments of that first half, except to say that Harvey does have a dig, which is palmed wide by Lloris on 43 minutes. So feel free to dig in wherever you wanted there, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, just on that, it was a good effort from Harvey. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of power behind it, but he got it where he wanted it and won us a corner. The goal, I mean, it's a poor clearance from Ali. That's what it is. It's a poor clearance that Eric Dyer should deal with really, really easily. It seems to come off his ear and then his shoulder as he mistimes his header. And Mo is in, and we've seen him in that position so many times. And, the guy is otherworldly once he's in front of goal. And it's an absolutely gorgeous finish. And he lets Lloris commit. And one of the things that is the mark of a great player is when they let the opposition make the decision for them. So, it's the patience, it's the calmness. With Darwin, you kind of feel like he might have snatched at that a bit earlier. But Mo is so confident and so good at what he does that he lets Lloris commit to going low and he just lifts it over him. If Lloris had stood up, Mo would have had a decision to make. Do I go right side? Do I go left side? But by Lloris trying to spread himself, Mo just lifts it over him because that's the option that's left, and it's a gorgeous finish. And it's hard to argue that we didn't deserve the 2-0 lead. Like, they'd had moments in that first half, and most of them, like I said earlier, came from targeting that diagonal ball from Dyer or Emerson or Basuma or Bentancur out towards Sessegnon. That's literally all they were trying to do. Switch that ball, get Sessegnon up against Trent, and get Perisic on the inside of Trent so that he could kind of drag Ibu away and give Kane the one-on-one with Virgil. But I thought in the first half we were the better team. I thought we played well. I thought we won our battles. We were combative in midfield. I thought Harvey did good defensive work internally, narrow. Like, he stepped in a couple of times and nicked the ball away from Højbjerg. He got into a couple of little challenges with Basuma. He was doing little bits there. The problem was it was making us far too narrow, and Trent was, for some reason, following across. And Sessegnon just held the width. And that's really all they had to offer us, was that big switch pass. Like you said, Trent just went through 5 or 6 minutes of being completely... He looked like he'd never played the game before. He looked like, when you were a kid and you went to, your cousin came to stay with you for the summer and you went out to play football with your mates and you had to bring him with you, even though he doesn't like football. And he just wouldn't really know what to do, and he'd be, shoving people and doing stupid things. But then the flip side is that on the ball, he's playing these gorgeous raking passes.
I was going to say your cousin's a hell of a man for diagonal balls.
That's the thing, and the flip side is when he has the ball at his feet, he looks like one of the best players in the world again. And it just like this contrast of on the ball versus off the ball. And the thing with Trent is, like, we've always known he's not the best defender in the world. But last season he showed he could be a good defender.
Why is he doing this to us now, Dave?
I don't know.
When so many of us have stood by and said, sorry, you professional pundit, you're a joke. This is wrong. Watch what he does here. And you'd see Trent winning challenge after challenge after challenge.
Yeah, really going one-on-one. Like, think of the Champions League final for a second. Now, he got some criticism for the goal, and fair enough. But think of the rest of that game. Like, that's Vinicius Jr., who by that stage had absolutely tortured Reece James and Kyle Walker in the Champions League. And Trent put him in his pocket for 89 minutes and 59 seconds.
Yeah.
And switched off very briefly. And it wasn't even his fault. It came from the other side. If the other side had done their job, that ball doesn't get across. But now he is playing like the player that Gary Neville has made him out to be for years. Like, there's fans of other clubs going, look, I told you he was a crap defender. Oh, you've waited 3 years for this. There was the Rashford game at Old Trafford where he got done twice. Both of them were Lovren's fault because he got left on an island. And they clung to that for years. Then there was like the odd little mistake that fullbacks make every now and then anyway. And now he's just a train wreck defensively. Now he is absolutely appalling defensively. I said it a few weeks ago when we were doing one of these. His body position when he squares up 1v1 as a defender is all wrong. He's not on his toes. He's slouched. His feet are planted. And he's just getting caught flat-footed time and time again. He used to be a very good back post defender. One of the best aspects of his defensive game was crosses from the right, from our left, the opposition right, coming across. And he got really good at body position. at knowing what was around him. His awareness was great, and he'd see balls out over the touchline. He'd hook them out for a throw-in. He'd give a corner if he had to give a corner. Now he just doesn't seem to have any awareness. But again, we see him on the ball, and those passes he's playing, there's no reason he couldn't play those passes from those areas with Joe Gomez at right back behind him. No reason at all that he couldn't play those passes as the right-sided midfielder, just dropping off a little bit, picking the ball up, having a ton of space in that defensive half space, and just pinging the ball here, there, and everywhere. No reason at all he couldn't play right-side midfield. And if you do that, you've still got the defensive presence behind him, as opposed to the big open space that's been left behind over the last 12 months or so.
I suppose what sticks in my craw here, and I want to bring you in this, Harry, to get your tuppence worth as well. What sticks in my craw about this, just on the Trent debate, because it's a big part of the story of this match, and will continue to be into the second half, which you and I will chat about now in a sec, is the whole idea of, we were looking at a guy who was emerging onto the world stage and making a new position in a way that, like, previous people who have played in that role had not quite done before, and it was a gorgeous thing to behold. And we were looking at a guy who was, a local kid come good, who was a genuine world star. And a potential great in the making in that position. And I really wanted him to just be this guy who could run games from right back. Dave and I over the years have talked on so many different shows about who he reminded us of, and the great right backs of all time, and how this guy, I remember doing I think it was in the back of the year we won the Champions League, doing a show in the summer about all-time Liverpool 11. Trent was in there. Trent was in people's all-time Liverpool 11 at right back. Now, can we say, Harry, that the wheels have come off, or is it just a sort of a function of the greater malaise, that the one area that possibly might have been a bit of a worry for us, which was people running at Trent, good attacking players running at Trent, has just become exacerbated, and it's all gotten into the kid's head as well. All this England talk, all this constant media chit chat, which we're not helping here at the moment. Is that possible? What do you see as his future? There was a time I used to dismiss this midfield thing out of hand because I didn't want to hear about it, because I loved how he could run a game from right back. Now I find myself swaying. Where are you on it?
Yeah, I guess I think I'm affording him a bit more sort of room than I think he's getting from a lot of people at the moment. I think that, you mentioned them about him being sort of an emerging talent on the world stage, in people's all-time 11s. For me, he's still one of the best players in his position in the world in terms of sort of the talent level that he's got, the achievements that he's had already at 24 years old. I think he has. There have been individual drops in performance, and Dave mentioned some technique there around his sort of individual defending that you can't excuse in terms of sort of that is him, and that is stuff he's got to be working on and be better on and demand more of himself. But I do think he's a victim of the system that we play, and I think that the right hand side has always been the lane that people target. Always, there's a space that's there. Trent is the primary creator, has been in this team for a long time. They've always attacked down that side. And we've spoken at length about, I think, as Klopp has done as well, that if Trent is being shown up or double teamed or things like that, it's down to the fact that the midfielder ahead of him is not doing the job that they should be doing. And I thought there are quite a few occasions today as well. We spoke about Elliott and all the quality that he's got on the ball, and I really love some of the combinations that we see with him when he's dovetailing with the attack. But yeah, he's not a midfielder, and also does not give Trent that cover either. And I was just thinking about if there was a better option in that channel, if Son was there, you would have had an even tougher time today, because I really didn't think he was getting the appropriate level of support. I would like to see what happens to him when we have an actual a midfielder in that position ahead of him of the actual sort of required quality in this team, who actually does the defensive work, maybe adds a little bit on the ball as well.
Very fair.
Just to see, I feel similar about Virgil at the moment as well. Around, I don't believe the players that I'm currently seeing are who they are. Like be all end all. This is it now for them. So, yeah, I'm a bit more forgiving of Trent, I think.
Yeah, listen, I think that's a really good point you make right there to death, and an important one. Let's see these guys at their best, surrounded by the best, and
The thing is, though, like the fact that we're even open to talking about Trent in midfield now just shows how much things have shifted. Because I remember having those exact same conversations you were having, Trev, around the year we won the Champions League and the Premier League, that this guy is an all-timer. He's already the best right back we've ever had, and we've had some great right backs at the club. Chrissy Lawler, Phil Neal, people like that. Now the fact that we would be all very open to moving him into midfield, and even just to see how that looks, and maybe he wants that as well. Like, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but maybe that's what he wants as well. Maybe he sees his future in midfield, either in a 3 or preferably, in my view, on the right of a 4, where he can play that narrow role and then spring wide, similar enough to De Bruyne and what he does. Now, he's not going to be De Bruyne level creativity, but I mean, if you look at players like Beckham didn't have the burst of speed. Beckham couldn't beat anybody on the dribble, but fuck me, he was effective as a right winger. Absolutely sensational as a right winger. And if you have Trent able to flex that role, and Diaz able to flex from the left-sided forward role to left wing, all of a sudden you can go 4-3-3 to 4-4-2 really, really quickly and effortlessly. And we saw some of those passes he played today, and you highlighted the couple that Darwin had a bit of an iffy touch on. If they're to Lucho, they're killed dead and he's away to the races. If that's Diaz, it's game over for that defence. Darwin obviously still has those rougher edges, but Diaz's first touch is out of this world.
And then imagine Darwin central off that Diaz
Diaz
situation.
Takes the touch, knocks it past the defender, cuts it across goal, and all of a sudden you've got Darwin and Mo flying in. That alone is a cheat code. Like, that is going to unlock defences. We saw City do that time and time again, where De Bruyne would drop back, pick the ball up off Kyle Walker, send it wide to Leroy Sané. He'd beat his man. Simple ball across. Aguero or Sterling with the tap in. We saw United do it with Beckham dropping back, making sure Gary Neville didn't have to pass more than 5 yards because he would have been out of his comfort zone. Flinging the ball wide to Giggs. Giggs had beat his man. Simple ball across. And a litany of strikers from Cole to York to Van Nistelrooy, even before them, with Cantona, all got endless tap-ins. Sheringham, Solskjaer, all got endless tap-ins off those type of goals. That is a tried and tested pattern of play. It's the reason more teams can't do it is because there's only been a few with that passing. And we did it ourselves. When we had Gerrard, he used to drop in, take the ball off the right back, fling it wide to Albert Riera, who could do limited things, but one of them was beat a man and fling a ball across the box. And Nando would fly onto it, or whoever the case may be. Dirk would get on the end of it and put it away. Like, it's such a simple thing that we could incorporate into our game. It would take away the defensive side from Trent. He'd still have to give a dig out to Gomez, or maybe we look to bring in somebody else in that role. But I'd like to see it tried. I don't understand why Klopp won't try it. He has the players to do it. The players are there. Gomez can play right back really well. So why not try it? You're trying everything else. We saw Henderson play left wing in a flat 4 with a Firmino-Fabinho double pivot in Amsterdam. Like, how is that less of a risk than trying Trent on the right side?
No, in a world where you can perform experiments of that awfulness, then surely this is not too big of an ask. The second half, we're going to take, and Dave, I'll be back to you to take it from where Kulusevski and Sessegnon come on about 67 minutes. And Harry, you and I look at this first chunk of that second half together, and big Martin Tyler's getting all what Reverend Al Sharpton would call jiddy about second half Spurs. He was getting very excited about this. He couldn't mention it enough as it started. And your thing that you mentioned earlier on, Darwin's like manic defending on our touchline down in the corner is one of the first moments of note, if not the first moment of note in that second half. He's mad, which I love. 47 minutes. Dyer heads that corner goalward, but Ali saves it, and in an old school 1980s throwback, holds the ball. I remember keepers used to do that. On 48 minutes, Perisic hits the bar from a Sessegnon cutback, and you're thinking, oh, Jesus. Martin Tyler's getting very excited now because they do look second half Spurs. They are completely with their tails up at this point. 49 minutes, another Dyer attempted cross, this time touched away by Ali. It's a corner. It was an attempt at a cross, but it could have gone in right in the top corner, and they get another corner. And in 50 minutes, Sessegnon comes in and curls a right footer wide from the edge of the box. And in those opening minutes, I mean, we've done all we can to allow Spurs to establish their chosen narrative, Martin Tyler to enjoy that narrative. And it seems such a daft choice. Now, I'm not saying that when a Premier League team of Spurs' ability decide to do something, that you will always have the choice of what you want to do in response. But we did seem quite open indeed, and that was a trend that continued, certainly for the next part as well. We did break it up where Mo has an effort on 53 minutes, which was saved after a decent move. But then there was that moment you mentioned, Harry, where Ali's pricking about, delaying, and Kane nearly robs him and scores. At this moment, I mentioned that Harvey's really good in terms of his involvement in our build-up play, retaining possession, that type of thing. But we must also acknowledge that, you know, his pal could really have done with a dig out on several occasions. And that does not seem to be a thing that he's being asked to do, or either that or he's not capable of doing it. On 56 minutes, Darwin did cut in and shoot from distance, but he didn't really connect with the ball well. It was a token effort, and really the shot wasn't on, if we're being perfectly honest. And he raids down the left within that same 60-second time period and pulls the ball back, but there's nobody there. After winning a challenge in the left back position, Darwin again is playing Mo through in a sort of central striker position. And Mo hits the ball wide, but I think he might have been offside anyway. Thiago tried a really odd one from distance at 62 minutes that had no real oomph to it at all. Tyler, after that period of play where Darwin Núñez was clearly our best player, is again back talking about his clumsy touch, and it's getting very close between him and Tyler at this stage to becoming, you know, something that's getting into the dodgy category in terms of what they're trying to do here. Robbo does a lovely run in 64 minutes that leads to a corner, and it ends after some play with another gorgeous Trent pass, this time into Mo. And for once, Mo, who's coming in from left to right, has a poor first touch when otherwise he might have been in on goal. Neville's enjoying the Trent stuff at this stage. Bobby Firmino, we need to pause, and I want to get your take on this as well, Harry, in your sum up now in a second. He was absolutely awful all game, if we're being honest. Bobby might be my top 2 or 3 favourite Liverpool players of all time, but when he's bad, he's so very bad. And he gave away a free kick on the right-hand side after he had lost the ball in the previous seconds. And from that free kick, Perisic, Kane heads it just wide. It's like a flashing effort, just wide. We could have been 2-2, and it would have been down to Bobby, his double mistake. And at that point, they bring on Kulusevski and Sessegnon, where I'm going to pick it up with Dave. Talk to me about that first half of the second half, and how we seem to have ceded almost all the momentum that we had built. There were a couple of of efforts by us to kind of wave a flag that we were still a force in the game. And it was only going to get worse after this. But talk to us about how you felt that first half, the second half went.
Yeah, I found it really irritating, to be honest, because I think, Martin Tyler had made a lot of the fact that sort of Spurs have been a better second half team this season, and that has been the case, right? And I think there's been plenty of games where their physical conditioning has told, just purely being sort of a well-conditioned team that's able to fight until the end. There's clearly a good spirit amongst that group, even for some of the deficiencies that they got in their squad at the moment. So I thought it was clearly going to be really important to start the second half well, to expect them to come at us. I think you don't want to get too arrogant. That's always going to happen. You're playing away from home to a side, and they're 2-0 down. They're going to throw a bit more at you, and there's some quality players on the pitch. But still, it was the little things. It was when Liverpool did have the ball and there was opportunities to keep the ball, just be sensible with it. Making rash decisions or taking too much time or like slowing things down when it looked like there was a good opportunity for a counter attack. It was just a bit frustrating, and you felt what was weird though was even in those moments, you felt with Spurs putting on more. Investing more sort of energy in it, pushing more men forward, that they would be susceptible to a counter. And that if we could just land that knockout blow, if Nunez could find the right pullback, if Mo could sort of find the right ruthless finish, whoever it would be, then that would be the game. That like scoring that next goal would have been enough, I think, to have really dampened down the rest of that game, I think, in terms of sort of where Spurs' confidence was at that stage. And we just couldn't quite do it. And you mentioned Bobby, and I thought, he was particularly bad today, which was sort of upsetting to see, considering how, he's shown some good flashes throughout this season. And it's always, when Bobby is bad and he's playing in that role as well, where we sort of need him to just do sensible things and get his weight of pass correct so we can actually have functioning counter-attacks, and he doesn't, and the ball bobbles off him and he underhits passes or pushes people wide or and ends up sort of losing it and then fouling people on the second touch. It really, really did sort of kill any momentum that you're looking to have. And so then at that stage, it looks like we don't really have much of a threat outside of individual efforts from Nunez. And I thought there was still some good stuff in the start of that second half with him making a nuisance of himself down that channel. I mean, I thought there were a couple of good efforts with him actually getting past his man and looking for the drag back and being unlucky not to find people, I think, in those moments. But it does look to me like he's trying to get to those positions now and just calm himself down a little bit more than we saw at the start of the season. I think he is trying to be a bit more mindful about what he does. I'm sure the instinct that he's still got is to lash it, as we saw on a few occasions. But I think you're seeing gradually, bit by bit, him be a bit more calm in those scenarios. So it was really frustrating because I knew, based upon what I'd seen of Spurs so far this season, and the fact that they did have Kulusevski on the bench as well, they had the ability to improve themselves and pile even more pressure on us. At that stage, it wasn't entirely clear that the tank was as empty as it then appeared to be for the next 25 minutes physically from us. But I felt that was the period of the game where if we just could land that one extra blow, I think we would have been in the clear.
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
You're right. It would have finished the game for sure, because it would have had such a psychological blow on them after their dominance in that opening period of the second half. If at some stage we could have, as you said, made something of some of those opportunities, they would have been sick and I think on their arses. But they do bring on Kulusevski, Dave, and Harry will be coming back to you. You can start gathering your wrap up thoughts for me, and we'll come back to you for those after Dave and I finish the second half. Kulusevski comes on for Sessegnon and Doherty for Emerson Royale on 67 minutes, Dave, and there a goal comes only 2 minutes after that with heavy involvement from both substitutions. Comes down our left hand side where Bobby Firmino had lost the ball yet again. Let's be absolutely clear about this, lest anyone think this is a witch hunt. Again, I reiterate, he's one of my favourite men and footballers of all time, but he was having a stinker and he should have been gone long before he was. Should have been substituted clearly long before he was. Doherty eventually placed the ball into Kulusevski, who was able to slide a through ball through to Kane, who, as alluded to earlier on, should have no opportunity for where he's hitting the ball, but it's struck very firmly from right to left into that far side rigging, past Ibu's outstretched leg and Ali, and they're back in it. And I'm just going to run through this chunk of the game, Dave, so you can chat about that goal and whatever of this summary you want to. God love you. You get the really shit part of the game at that stage. Then after they get a goal back, Big Tone Conte on the line is getting himself into a bit of bother. Bobby Firmino on 72 minutes gives the ball away again. He needed at that point, if he hadn't already, to go off. And at that point, 73 minutes, Henderson and Curtis come on for Bobby Firmino and Harvey Elliott. Okay, you think. Ibu goes down after a challenge on Kane. He's hurt. They actually went to VAR with it, which obviously said nothing. We couldn't get a kick between 75 and 78 minutes. Literally couldn't get our foot on the ball at all. It was anytime it came to a red, it was one touch and back to the opposition. On 78 minutes, Langley headed over a Perisic corner when, if we're being honest, it's a really good opportunity. He's up ahead of everybody else. He should bury it. And they should be level. We're so sloppy and nervy and jittery at this point. We get away with a bit of a Fabinho foul on the edge of the D. And I thought overall, Fabinho had a decent game. I wouldn't have thought Thiago had his greatest game ever, but I was happy enough with Fabinho. And then Thiago does have a lovely ball into Darwin Núñez straight after that. And Darwin hits the bar, but I think he would have been given offside. Dyer puts a ball into Bentancur in 82 minutes. And his central header, again, should be converted. It's a poor attempt. Alisson saves it. There's a ball put in towards Doherty, and he cleans Ali out of it. And our pal Andy Manley just plays on, no problem. Alisson is down, and eventually we get away with that situation. Alisson had done enough in the challenge. 85 to 86 minutes, we're under tremendous pressure again. Kulusevski kind of is coming in, raiding centrally. He dinks one. It's a cross shot, and it just goes wide of Ali's right post. At that point, then, we bring on Joe Gomez on 86 minutes for Darwin Núñez. And on 87 minutes, the captain gets the ball in the centre circle and he starts sort of pricking around on it, gets caught in possession, and we're under pressure again. 88 minutes, Lucas Moura comes on for Basuma. So it's clearly what their intent is. 88 minutes, again, Perisic's cross is a really good one, and Kane flicks his header painfully close to going in across the face of goal. Straight after that, one of our better performers on the day, Andy Robertson, decides to go from left back, driving into midfield on a run when he knows he must have very little left in the tank, and drives into an area of Spurs players where he gets caught in possession and coughs the ball up. There's 4 minutes added. There are 2 dangerous balls into our box after those 4 minutes are added. We bring on Ox for Mo, and there's nothing really of note in the injury time, except to say that we have ceded all intent at this point, and we are inviting them on in a way that just seems to me, and always has, to be absolutely stupid. Can't clear our lines, can't string a couple of passes together, always seem to allow them to have overlapping runs. Nobody's getting done for a yellow card because they decide to kick a lad into the air on the halfway line and say, fuck you, end of this move. Nobody's doing anything. We're just like, come on, yeah, see what happens. And it really reminded me of the bad old days, Dave. And I don't like saying it because we got a great win here, but it's sickened me.
Yeah, I mean, you know my love of Simeone and Capello and managers like that who are absolute masters at just shutting a game down with a defensive substitution. But one thing they never really do is they never change their defensive structure in game to shut a game down. They just compact things in front of them. So they'll take off a striker, put on a midfielder. And Klopp seems to go the other way around. And he pricks around with the defensive structure and throws everything all over the place. I mean, we ended that game playing a flat back five and a flat five in midfield. And Ox trying to make shuttle runs to kind of be our striker. And just inviting pressure for no reason. I mean, Kulusevski comes on, and like you said, he makes an instant impact, but their goal is far too easy for them. It's the type of thing you'd see on a training ground when a coach is trying to, put a bit of a pattern of play in place, and the defending team are sort of walking through to give the options. I would walk to here, now you make your decision. Where do you go? You go there, and then that's the pass on there. And our lads are jogging, and Kulusevski only has one pace, and that is full bore. And he is just drifting through our lads. From there, I mean, it is literally almost a procession of half chances, balls into the box, half cleared efforts. Nobody in our team seemed willing to just put their foot through the ball. There's a couple of weak defensive headers. Ibu had a really weak defensive header that ended up getting put out to Perisic, and I think Ibu managed to get a nick on the cross and direct it back to Ali, and Virgil has a pop at him for that. He had a pop at Trent for not stopping the cross. Alisson tore strips off Andy Robertson for not closing out quick enough as well. We're inviting all this pressure, and yet we're not being diligent enough in our defensive play. We're not actually showing the right levels of aggression, the right levels of intensity to invite that pressure. And that's got to be a concern. I mean, the substitutions Klopp made, you could see the logic behind the double change. Bobby, I agree with you. I thought he was absolutely atrocious. And this is going to be a little bit controversial. I don't think Bobby's having nearly as good a season as people have made him out to have. I think people have this view that if a player scores a goal, he's played well. But if people can list me the games in which Bobby's actually played really well and hasn't scored, I'd be really interested to see, because I reckon there's been about 3 this season. And even in one of the games that he scored in, which was Brighton, he got 2. I didn't think he played particularly well. I don't think he's played particularly well in the Champions League. He was brilliant against Bournemouth, got 2 goals and 3 assists. And I think that's coloured people's view of what his season has been. But if we're all being really honest, Bobby has not been Bobby for a few years now. Really since the year we won the Champions League, Bobby hasn't been that same level of player on a consistent basis. He does it in spurts, but then he has long stretches of been really ineffective. We've had drunk Bobby, we've had Robert, we've had all these different iterations of him, and today was a full-blown Robert performance. He was awful. His touch was heavy, his pressing wasn't good. He wasn't strong in challenges where he's normally very, very good. Normally Bobby can lean a shoulder into somebody and just take the ball off them. None of that today. He looks exhausted as well as the other thing. He's played an awful lot of football in the last while. If you look at our last, 5 league games, he started them all. he started our last 3 Champions League games as well. So he started 8 games in a row off the back of the Arsenal game where he came on early. That's not ideal by any stretch. It really isn't ideal by any stretch. He's just playing too much football. And even the game before Arsenal, he played majority of the game. So I think he's in part tired. I do think he is past his best. I think he'll give you one good game out of 3 or 4, like one really good game out of 3 or 4, one okay game, one bad game, and then one like today. I think that's just the cycle he's in now. And there's a lot of talk, obviously, about his contract. I'd be waving him goodbye in the summer. Like, a big hug. Thank you so much for absolutely everything you've done. We do not have the Premier League and the Champions League without you. But thanks a million and enjoy wherever you go next. Because his next contract is going to be another Henderson contract. Like, it's going to be a massive mistake. And if anyone wants to argue about Jordan Henderson's contract being a mistake, I'm not sure what planet they live on. He's come on the pitch today in that double change. He comes on for Harvey. And again, you can in theory see the logic. He's a bit more experienced. It's 20 minutes. He'll come on with energy and he'll, give Trent a dig out, and just didn't do any of that. Carl Matchett sent a text into the scouted group with about 5 minutes to go saying he was trying to think of what the exact opposite of Henderson's sub-appearance today was. And it was probably Gerrard coming on against Napoli and scoring a hat-trick. Like, Henderson was the exact opposite of that. He was so poor. He couldn't string a pass together. His touch was off. He seemed terrified to try and use his left foot. Gave the ball away a couple of times in really stupid positions. The Clement Langley headed chance, that's Henderson's fault because he doesn't pick him up properly on the corner. Yeah, you mentioned when he pricks about in the middle of the park for no reason.
That was huge for me. And it's not to jump on Jordan. It's huge for me because, he does have that elevated position amongst our in the ranks of our footballers as captain and all the rest of it. And he is coming on to bring that nous and experience and energy and all those things. And it would have been a beautiful opportunity to release a bit of pressure from where we were. And there were several option balls ahead of him. And like Ali earlier on, he gets caught napping and you're going, what?
Even if he just got his head up, looked at the corner flag,
and hit that, yeah.
And tried to clip the ball a yard inside the corner flag, down in their defensive third, and let our team push up, catch their breath, and just reset everything. Like, that's all you're asking them to do. If there isn't an option on, there's your option. Put it in the corner flag and make them go back and take a throw in. And this has been going on and on all season. And the truth of it is, he was this bad last season. It's just that people chose to overlook it because we were winning. But now we're not winning, so it's more flagrant. Like, I've said this to you before, people tend to judge players on did they score or create a goal rather than looking at the entire 90 minutes. And the same thing, they tend to think, well, the team won, so everybody must have played well. But as we're discussing, we won today. We didn't play well as a team. And there were a number of individuals, such as Trent, such as Bobby, in the starting 11, who were dreadful. Now, Trent's passing was very good, so you give him maybe a 6 out of 10, but the defensive work was a 2 out of 10. And then Henderson comes on. He's all over the place. Jones comes on, can't really get involved in the game. Gomez comes on, and it doesn't really make sense as to why we've done this. Why are we playing a back 3 now? It was all just very, very ragged from us. And what you're looking for from your captain, your oldest player, well, bar Milner, the oldest regular player coming on, is a bit of nous, a bit of leadership, a bit of, calming things down, making the right decision, doing the diligent defensive job. And then just none of that happens. And when him and Jones come on again, I could see the logic in bringing them on at the time. But it made us significantly worse and significantly more open.
Yeah, it's puzzling. It's been one of the features of the season so far. Dave, I'll come back to you for your quick wrap up thoughts in a sec. And Harry, let's get yours now. I mean, to sum up then overall, in terms of what way you've been left feeling after this. Let's remember, perhaps, I've been a little bit to blame for driving the conversation towards some of the more negative points, and far be it from me to feed the type of individuals who like to point to people who are critical and say that they're whatever bottom reds or whatever. So let's allow me to accept all the blame for any of the more negative chats we've had here. As you find yourself reviewing what is, at the end of the day, a fantastic 3 points against Spurs, what way are you left thinking overall?
Yeah, just relieved, I think, at the end of that game. I think that there was a period during that game where if the Reds had done it sort of what we were hoping they did, as we talked about there, maybe at the start of the second half, and take those, be ruthless, in that 10 to 15 minute period after Spurs had a bit of a bounce back at the start of the second half, then we come onto this pod talking in a much more probably a much more relaxed way around that game. Obviously they didn't do that, and so I do think that there was quite a bit of luck in there actually with us coming out winners in that game. I think there's some great individual performances, and it's brilliant to see Konate back in the team. I think I'd very much like to see him start every single game if he can actually now, for just in terms of sort of his impact on the side, I think, and sort of his physical sort of strengths that help us immensely in terms of sort of his strength and also the pace that he has as well. But also I think just his defensive reading of the game and sort of how proactive he can be is going to be really helpful for us going forward. And so I think you end up coming away from that game being delighted at Mo Salah's form, being delighted at the fact that Nunez looks like he continues to progress in his development and sort of understanding of how he can be more effective for us. But I do think that, I mean, you come away from that game and it just highlights the issues that we have, and we've been speaking about for the past few weeks, months at this stage, in terms of there being a need for reinforcement in midfield, at least one, if we're really serious about competing for top four. So I think I'm relieved that we got 3 points. It's huge. So a lot of people complaining about the Trent challenge on Sessegnon, but I was just reminded of the sort of stonewall penalty against Jota that we didn't get last season, which was very nice. So it comes around and I think as well with Neville, his preoccupation with Trent and Nunez's sloppy touches and things like that. Obviously he's had a tough couple of days, obviously having been heavily roasted for his hypocrisy with Qatar, and the fact that he'll be taking the money and presumably heavily criticizing the country and organization whilst he's in commentary, which I somewhat doubt is going to be the case. So he's got plenty to think over as well. But only one more game, Trev, in the Premier League to sort of concern ourselves with for the next few weeks, and I think it's the fact that comes as a little bit of a relief, and gives us the opportunity to maybe, I'm hoping they're heavily scouting who we can get in January to help this team kick on. But you could never turn your nose up at 3 points away to a team that was sat in third.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Southampton's heavy defeat today, and they are our final opposition, as you mentioned, has probably could well be the end of
it looks like he's gone.
Knock off Klappo. Hasenhüttl. So maybe the single white female incidents of the Premier League will be coming to an end, but we'll see. Hopefully they won't have a new manager bounce against us. And Harry, just before I let you go, a reminder, you will probably no doubt have a rival recon for that Southampton game. Anything else from you in the meantime?
No, there'll be that rival recon ahead of the Southampton game, and then I think actually I'll be working probably on some previews and for sort of the games that we are going to be returning to after the World Cup. But I think I'll just also be sort of trying to get myself involved with pods that we can do sort of throughout the World Cup, and maybe not focus so much on on the Reds because it's been a bit of a drag.
It's been a bit of a drag, and you can guarantee, my friend, that I'll be bothering you on a regular basis as we try to drum up some content for that. So that's coming up from Harry, and thanks to Harry for that summary. And Dave, just quickly your own then, and whatever you've got coming up for the last week of this first half of the season.
Yeah, there's just three things I want to hit. One, just to re-emphasize again how good Ibu was today. That's one of the best strikers in the world, and barring that one goal, which it is an outstanding bit of work by Kane, Ibu was flawless, absolutely flawless. The Martin Tyler Darwin thing is very interesting. There was one moment where Trent played a ball. Darwin took a great touch, knocked it out of his feet, and ran after it. And Tyler tried to call it a heavy touch. And I can only assume that the reason Martin Tyler is so upset with Darwin is because he turned United down, his beloved Manchester United down in the summer, preferring to join us. I can only assume that's what it is. I also love Simon Brundish having a shot at Neville for not calling out the Lucas Moura attempts to win a penalty when Thiago's boot doesn't really touch him. And if it did, it brushed him. And yet he fell on the floor holding his face. Yeah. Which was, pathetic. And Thiago let him know it was pathetic as well. Look, 3 points is what matters. And the thing that's mad about this team is we've beaten City, we've beaten Newcastle, and we've beaten Tottenham. They're all in the top four. We've beaten them all. We should have beaten Arsenal. As bad as we played, if you think about that game, their first goal is offside, and it's a mistake by the Hawkeye system, or the cameras not being where they should be. Their third goal is a dive, the penalty. Jesus dives to win the penalty, and we have a blatant penalty turned away. So they were the better team on the day, not suggesting they weren't. They weren't good, we were just awful. But we still should have won the game 3-1, because two of their goals shouldn't have happened, and we should have had a third. So for some reason, we can do this against better teams. It's just against all the rest that we're struggling. I firmly believe we get our players back in January. We get a couple of players in January. And I do think we need to add 2. There's no reason we can't finish top 4. Absolutely not. We can absolutely finish top 4. I think we can finish top 3. And we can go on and have a really good run in the European Cup. And as we've shown in games like the City game, and even at spells today, we've shown we can go up against the top team and just outplay them and be just better than them. We just need to get a couple of players back and to get a couple of new players in. And it can transform the whole thing. And I think we'll see a different Virgil after the World Cup. I think we'll see normal Virgil after the World Cup. But I really want to see Virgil and Ibu stay as the pairing. Yeah. I just think they work so well together. The size, the pace, the power, the cleverness, the awareness. I just think it's a really good pairing. And that's, like the league is wide open. I wouldn't for 1 second put any faith. I wouldn't bet a penny on Arsenal winning the league. I wouldn't bet a penny on them finishing in the top 3. They may well get 4th. They may well get 2nd or 3rd, but I just don't believe in them as a team. I think they've had this incredible run of luck to date, where you see Chelsea game today, Chelsea are missing half a team through injury. Same thing when they played us. They got us just the right time. The City game they were meant to play got called off. But I watched them against Southampton get opened up a few times. I watched them against United look really naive. And aside from that, they've played this really easy run of games outside of a couple against good teams. So I wouldn't put any faith in them. Newcastle are massively overperforming as well. I don't think they'll sustain it. And I think it's still there for us to not win the league. I think City are going to win it by 10 points easy. But to certainly get top 4 and to have a decent season off the back of this World Cup break, which is another thing. It comes at a great time for us, comes at an awful time for the likes of Arsenal and Newcastle, who are in the form of their lives. And that's just going to stop next week. So we'll see what happens coming. We saw teams go into the break for coronavirus in great form and come out of it an absolute mess. Southampton's going to be interesting next week. I wonder if they have someone lined up. I wonder is the ginger Conte, Mr. Sean Dyche, being lined up for that one? He would seem like the right kind of manager in that situation, though it is a very young squad, which isn't what he likes. I just think the league is so bizarre. Like, you look at Bournemouth, right? We beat them 9-0. They sack the manager. They go on a really impressive unbeaten run, get themselves into the top half of the league. Now they've lost 4 straight in the back to 17th. Like, the league doesn't make any sense. Leeds were in the bottom 3 when they played us last week, 2 wins in a row, and now they sit 12th. Like, there's no real gaps anywhere in the league. Like, we're only 7 points behind Spurs, and we have a game in hand. And if Chelsea play against us like they did today, we will wipe the floor with them, even if we're not playing particularly well. So there's plenty to be still fairly confident about as long as we do the right things in terms of bringing in a couple of players in January. And for me, you'll have two-footed, the Daily Red. There'll be at least one scouted for Southampton. We'll try and get a second one done on something else. And I believe Mr. Drinkle is leading the charge on the League Cup coverage during the week. But I'm looking forward to that game because we'll get to see Ramsey and Basetic and some of these other young players. I hear there's a kid in the academy by the name of Spearing that might be worth a look as well.
Tremendous. Yeah. There's the second half of your sentence there where you said there's a lot to look forward to, providing is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
It is doing a lot of heavy lifting. It is doing a lot of heavy. But even just the break.
Yeah, absolutely.
The break for Salah, the break for Darwin, get Diaz back, get Jota back, hit reset. You know, with a bit of luck, the Brazilian manager didn't watch Fabinho in the last couple of games and just decided a couple of weeks ago to write him off for the World Cup. Yeah. And with a bit of luck, Luis Enrique just decides to leave Thiago at home. And all of those guys get loads of lovely, lovely rest and can come back. And look, we know that this group of players is more than capable of putting together a run of 8 wins and 2 draws in 10 games. We know they're capable of it because we've seen them do it.
Yeah, and that solidifies your place in the top 4 if you can maintain halfway average form between now and the end of the campaign. It's interesting. Look, it's a hell of a time, and we will be back for one more Raw on the Premier League with myself and Dave, and I'm not sure who's joining us for that one. Guy will be doing the Derby game in the week in the League Cup.
It's Harry again for Southampton, by the way.
Tremendous. So we'll get the band back together for the last game before the break. And like I say, Guy will be looking after you guys in the week for the Derby game when all the children will be out to play. So that should be entertaining. And as Dave says, moments and ideas of optimism can come into your head. They may be dependent on certain things, but even the rest, even the reset button being hit will help a little bit there. So we will look forward to our last Raw of the first half of this very weird season with the 3 of us again and Guy producing. Thanks to him for doing that. You heard Hari Sethi, you heard Dave Hendrick. I've been Trev Downey. This is Raw. It's gone long. We'll be back with you soon.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.